These days, game studios are caring less and less about their file sizes and just aren't afraid to pump out games that take up an outrageous amount of space. Like, I don't know about you guys, but nowadays, when I install a new game, it's like making a crucial life decision figuring out what games I'm gonna uninstall to make room for. In those moments, I'm always staring at my Steam library like it's a life or death situation. But you know, the beauty of gaming in modern times is the fact that the options of upgrading your storage is plentiful and readily available. So if you wanted to go crazy and buy a few terabytes of space for your build, there's no stopping you. Well, except maybe your wallet, because some of these parts aren't cheap. It can set you back a couple of Ben Franklins. The only thing to really keep in mind when choosing your storage is the type of it that you choose to buy going forward, because right now we're in the early stages of a shift in gaming where games are starting to only support a certain type of storage. You all might remember that a few weeks ago, the upcoming game of Starfield by Bethesda was making some headlines in the media since they announced that the game would require a solid-state drive storage on PC and wouldn't support a hard drive storage. Also that the game has an 125GB base install size. That's got nothing to do with the video. I just almost had heart failure when I first heard that part. Now, SSD and HDD storage are the two types of ways game data is saved and ran on gaming hardware, and it should pretty much be universal knowledge that, between the two, an SSD is the better option for most people. But only up until recently have a few games decided to just say fuck hard drive support entirely and just start leaving people with no other options. Especially those like me who have both an SSD and HDD, but mostly install my games and other totally legally obtained content on a hard drive. So why is that? Why exactly are solid state drives a better option, and what does it mean for the future of gaming on this type of hardware? Well, it's all pretty important information to know, since it could mean that people might have to switch out the storage types in the future. So, with that, we're going to get into all of that today, and hopefully by the end of the video, you'll have a better understanding as to why solid state drives are being required for gaming. So before we dive into what makes an SSD so good, why not figure out why the HDD isn't as good and why game developers like it less in modern times? Well, you see, the HDD or hard disk drive was one of the first methods created for system storage dating back into the 50s when IBM made computers that were literally the size of my room right now. Just look at that, that's crazy. It serves as a storage device that reads and writes data that the operating system it's binded to tells it. It has a disk-like thing inside of it called a platter where the data is stored, and the platter gets its electrical charge from the actuator arm, which is what reads and writes the data. Hopefully you didn't just fall asleep right there, and I'm not going to give you the full anatomy lesson on a hard drive since I doubt anybody cares, so I don't even know why I just... Anyways, the main takeaway is that hard drives are one of the oldest and common forms of system storage, and mainly the more cheaper option when compared to the average SSD price. However, with it using somewhat archaic or old-fashioned technology, it's way slower and less dependable, especially for games nowadays that utilizes a large read and write speed number. So using this kind of hardware on modern games is what causes things like graphic limitation or loading screens longer than Grand Theft Auto 5 back on the PS3 and Xbox 360, because that was a lethal amount of time. But it's still doable. HDDs are, extremely common in most PC builds and even have externally on your console, so they're not completely phased out. So now that we know that, what about the solid state drive? Well, this method of storage was created not long after the hard drive was made, and more or less it has the same purpose of system storage, except it instead uses NAND flash memory to read and write data, which is memory that doesn't require power to retain the data. It's pretty dope. So because of this, it pretty much shits on a hard drive in every way imaginable. It has faster read and write speeds, faster loading times, better graphics, more reliability, and overall just a much safer thing to bet on when considering how important game storage and just overall storage in general is for your hardware. And because of that, like we mentioned before, with Starfield being a big ass game with apparently a lot of in-game mechanics, is the reason it's just one of the many titles that wants to utilize the power of an SSD rather than trying to use a hard drive, since it might ruin the experience of the gameplay. I mean, with all the delays that the game has already seen, the last thing they need is for the game to run like dog water too. Microsoft's only like one more bad game away from starting riots among their player base. So that's basically the reason for SSDs being as popular as they are now, and going forward, I'd expect to see a lot more games requiring this storage type. While it can be a little inconvenient for those who mainly use a hard drive like myself, when you consider the benefits, you'll probably be more on Team SSD as time goes on. You know, that's just my opinion at least. So hopefully this transition is smooth and games can continue to make the most of SSDs in the future. So what do you guys think about SSDs and gaming, man? Feel free to comment down below. And as always, leave a like on the video, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.